I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home, baby, now. I'm coming home now, right away. I'm coming home, baby, now. I'm sorry now I ever went away. Every night and day I go and say, I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
Welcome to Piedmont Housing Alliance's series of discussions on building dreams and creating wealth. My name is Karen Reifenberger, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. Piedmont Housing Alliance produces the series of shows on topics related to its mission. PHA is a regional nonprofit organization with a mission to create housing and community development opportunities for very low to moderate income families and individuals, teach financial literacy and money management, home ownership and home buying skills, and advocate for affordable housing programs and policies. Today's discussion will focus on reducing debt. Welcome to our guests. I'm pleased to be joined today by Shelley Murphy of Piedmont Housing Alliance, Marty Wegbright of the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, and Corbin Hargraves of Provident Financial Group. Thank you all for being here. To start our discussion, please introduce yourself, tell us what your role is in the community, and how you work with people and their debts.
I'm Shelley Murphy. I'm the Director of Program Services, and what we have is a housing counseling program. We are a HUD certified agency. We have 4 counselors that meet with individuals one-on-one for homeownership counseling, basic financial literacy, also how to get out of predatory loans, default foreclosure prevention counseling, plus we offer education and outreach classes, tips on how to, clean up your credit, how to build a budget, how to pay off your debt, and things like that.
Yep, great, thank you.
I'm Marty Wegbright. I'm a senior managing attorney with Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, and we provide free civil, non-criminal legal aid for low-income people in Richmond, Petersburg, Charlottesville, and the surrounding cities and counties. We concentrate primarily in 5 areas of law. One of them is consumer law, bankruptcy, debt collection defense, consumer fraud, garnishment protection, both wage garnishment and bank account garnishment. We also offer assistance in employment law, particularly unemployment compensation, wrongful discharge, family law, all of the issues of divorce, custody, visitation support, housing law, particularly evictions and foreclosures and other landlord-tenant matters, and finally, public benefits, whether it's Social Security or SSI disability benefits or other types of public benefits, and a wide variety of other civil, but those are the primary areas that we focus on.
You must be busy.
We are extraordinarily busy.
So.
There are 125,000 low-income people in the 5 cities and 15 counties that we serve, and this year we will receive over 10,000 requests for assistance. We have 8 lawyers. Do the math.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, so hopefully people can get some information here that will either prevent them from needing to come see you or
Absolutely.
Or otherwise learn.
And one of the things we try to do is to get information. I'll put a plug right now for the statewide legal aid website, which is www.valegalaid.org, all strung together, no punctuation. You can access it, obviously, from anywhere and get information on hundreds of different topics, including consumer law and the type of issues we're talking about here.
Great, thank you. Corbin.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
And yes, my name is Corbin Hargraves. I am a licensed financial consultant with the Providence Group of Virginia. I've been in the financial services industry for over about 6 years now. We just opened our office recently here this year in 2010, close by the Barracks Road Shopping Center. And the mission of the Providence Group is basically to educate, simplify, and enhance our clients. Financial literacy is very important to us. We feel as though one of the biggest things that's happened over the years that people have not strapped themselves with the appropriate information in order to make informed choices and decisions. A lot of times we want to blame these financial institutions, but the consumer have to take some responsibilities as well too. So we definitely harp on financial literacy, whether that's debt management, ways to clean up your credit, ways to establish credit, to make sure you're on the right track. We work with first-time home buyers and people that are repeat buyers. We also deal with some stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, and investment planning, and ways that people can actually prepare themselves so they can have a prosperous future. So that's our mission.
That's very comprehensive.
Yes.
And I also understand you do some community education.
Absolutely. We work with partners not only as Piedmont Housing Alliance, but we also have partnered up with the Boys and Girls Club to do a mentoring role where you're never too early to start learning about your finances and starting to plan. Talk to your kids, talk to the youth about putting money to the side and understanding the value of a dollar and how hard work can pay off for you when it's all said and done. There's been a lot of programs that we've been working with some of the schools, such as Beaufort Middle School, where we have mentoring roles and helping them understanding that you're never too young to really start taking consideration of your future and how serious it is. So it's been a very rewarding and successful year for us, and looking forward to 2011.
Great, thank you. And I understand, Shelley, there's something new that's going to be going on, or a new emphasis for 2011 at Piedmont Housing Alliance.
Get out of debt 2011.
Yes.
Get out of debt.
Yes, yes. And that's why we bring people like Corbin and Marty in, because there's the education piece, there's the hand-holding piece, you know, we've got the counseling piece and things like that. So most of our classes over 2011 will be focused on helping people recognize what debt they have and how do they reduce that debt, with the goal of eliminating as much debt as they can.
Okay. Well, let's start from the beginning. I'm just going to throw out a question. Whoever can answer, jump on it.
Yeah.
What is debt, and is there healthy debt and unhealthy debt? Can you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, debt is what you owe to your creditors. And I would say that there are probably three characteristics of healthy debt. The first is that the interest rate that you're paying is actually a reasonable rate. Now, incredibly enough, the legal interest rate for a contract in Virginia is 12%, except that there are numerous loopholes and exceptions that pretty much swallow the rule, because anything that you as a consumer and the creditor agree to can be a legal interest rate above 12%. And so you see interest rates that are, you know, for credit cards, 25, 35, 45%, and for car title loans and payday loans, you see it in the 300% range. That is clearly unhealthy debt. The second type of characteristic of healthy debt is you can afford to pay it back. You're not overextended. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. And the third, I think, is that it's a debt for something that you need as opposed to something that you want. And there's a big difference, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more, between your needs and your wants.
Absolutely. I'd like to piggyback off what Marty was saying. Debt is not only to the creditors, but it's what you owe, period. A lot of times, for example, with me being a licensed loan officer, when we run credit reports, we go by what the total debt to income ratio is, what's on the credit report. But a lot of times, personal debts that are not even on your credit report drastically can impact your overall financial budget and how you are going to play out on what you should be buying versus what you shouldn't be buying. So it's not necessarily what is accurately reported to the credit companies or to the creditor, but it's everything that you owe, period. Because a lot of times people have personal loans that are not necessarily recorded or in a legal format, as I'm sure that Marty can give us personal expertise on, that people come into the office and just say, you know what, I've got debt, whether it's something that we have vices, because we all have vices. So it's everything that you owe. Period, point blank.
And to follow up on that, we're seeing clients, and it doesn't matter if they're low income or middle class or even upper class that come in for counseling services, because Piedmont Housing Alliance services are open to anyone. There are different programs that we operate, but we've seen people that have $40,000 and $50,000 just in credit debt or in consumer loans. And it's like, how did that happen? They're not bringing in $50,000 a year. So there's some myths here or something that there's a disconnect. People getting things, like Marty was saying, we're going after what we think we want versus what we actually need or what we can live with. And so I think there's a big, huge need for the education for people to understand You need to just live within your means. If you only bring in $50,000 a year, you should not have $50,000 worth of debt. And we aired a couple years ago the Maxed Out documentary. We did it on the downtown mall, and we had a nice group that came out. You know, it was open to the public. It's probably time to do that again. And it walked through the whole credit card industry. And it almost came across, you know, like it's set up for you not to get out of debt and never to pay it down. And we can talk about predatory lending and things like that, and I'm sure you'll weigh in on that. But it seems that the credit card industry is designed for you never to come out of debt.
You're exactly right about that. I mean, indeed, that's how creditors in the credit card industry make their money. It's by the people who keep the balance month after month after month and never really pay it down significantly. The people who do pay off their credit cards every month, there's a name that the credit card industry has for them. They're called the deadbeats.
Oh, gosh.
And the reason they're called the deadbeats is because the credit card companies are not making much money off of those folks because they are paying off their balances in full every month. I think Shelley's right. It's a debt trap. They want to keep you in debt. That's how they make their money. That's true of credit card companies. That's true of banks with hidden fees. That's certainly true of the predatory lenders
like
as well.
the design of the predatory lender, you know, it's almost like they're standing at the door when people walk in and say, I got you, and you're not coming out of here. Once you walk in there, you are caught into that web, and the whole model is not designed for you ever to pay it off. You know, and again, it comes back to the basic finances of budgeting, knowing what money's coming in, what money's going out, and when it has to go out, and how to save, because people aren't saving. It's just not in our culture right now at all.
And I think also, it's a catch-22, because in order to build credit, you have to have credit. And you have to be able to prove to the finance companies that you are able to effectively manage your credit. There's no way to get these upper 700s or these 800 credit scores without you being able to prove to them that you have a successful track record of having good money management skills and being able to pay your debts on time, to be able to pay your debts under the limits that they would like to see you instead of maxing out your credit cards or your lines of credits.
But you know, that's not... The lenders, mortgage lenders, and consumer loan companies and things like that, it kind of is leaning that way now, but that's not the track record for the consumer. That track record is, I don't care what your credit score is, I'm going to give you that loan. And you're going to pay for that loan with these exorbitant high fees.
Right.
So there was no consideration for the consumer if they really could afford within their budget, because this is my experience, they're looking at through a tunnel at the client's financial situation. Where your business and what we do in housing counseling is we're looking at the whole household. What's going on in there? Where's the money coming in? What bills are coming in? And how do you spend your money? When we would go in and people would go in and get these loans with 550 credit scores and they could go buy a house. Well, it's a little tougher now, but there's still lenders out there that come with these, we can do this. We still have clients coming in that have 600 credit scores, and there's lenders out there saying, we can get you a loan to buy your house.
Sure, and to follow up on what Corbin and Shelley said, the poor pay more. You need good credit to get good credit. If you don't have good credit, you're going to be paying a higher interest rate, and that's going to keep you from basically being able to repay that or repay it timely. That's going to keep your credit score down, so the next time you borrow, again, it's going to be at a much higher interest rate than somebody who has a better credit score. When we call it a debt trap, we're not kidding. It really is a trap.
But how, and this is a question, why, and I'm going to link this to credit scores, and this is a question I've had for years. You know, okay, I had some ups and downs in my life, so my credit score is low, and I'm trying to rebuild it. Why does the system make us pay more to get credit because our credit score is low? You know, what's the math there?
Well, from a purely economic standpoint, if you're a poor risk, then the lender is taking a bigger risk by lending to you, and therefore they have to charge more on the theory that if you're a bigger risk, there's more likelihood of your default, of them not collecting from you, and therefore they have to make it up by charging other people, or you in particular, more on the annual percentage rate. And that's a thing that people really make a huge mistake when they go out buying something. They're not looking at the annual percentage rate. They're not looking at the total finance charge. They're concerned about one thing and one thing only. What's the monthly payment? And if they say, oh, it's $100 a month, they don't pay any attention to the fact that the annual percentage rate may be 36% or 300%, and it may go on for years as opposed to months. People really need to pay attention to the annual percentage rate. The lower it is, obviously, the better deal it is.
But this also goes back to why it's so important that the consumer has the information.
Yes.
When you are going into
really
the financial institution, if you say to yourself, you know what, you have had some of those bumps and bruises before, Shelley, and maybe it might be in my best interest to wait a while for me to go in. Because 2% over the life of a home loan, for example, is a huge or significant amount of savings reduction that you can actually have. So maybe it's best that the consumer says, you know what, instead of us buying in 2010, it might be better for me to buy in 2012. So it becomes up to the consumer. Because yes, a lot of these lenders, a lot of these financial institutions are pushing these loans and these finance products onto the consumer. But then who does it ultimately become the responsibility of taking on this product?
Right.
That's the big question.
Yeah. Right. And I want to back up for a minute and speak to people who may be just starting out and who may not understand the consequences of debt. So can you talk a little bit about, in a little more detail, the practical, the legal consequences of getting into debt and your credit, and what that means for you at different points of your life, and what how that either opens or closes doors for you?
Well, sure. Legally, I mean, if you aren't paying back at least what you owe on a monthly basis in full, on time, every month, eventually the debt collectors will start calling, whether it's the creditor collecting their own debt or whether it's a third-party debt collector. And there is a federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act that regulates third-party debt collectors, does not regulate creditors collecting their own debt. But whether you're being contacted by the creditor or a debt collector, they will be pretty persistent, because usually they have no better way to get their money than to try to scare and shame and intimidate you into paying. And if you still don't pay, then of course the collection letters will come, and eventually lawsuits will come, a warrant in debt, which is a civil claim for money, and you will have a money judgment against you. That money judgment, of course, can be reported to the credit bureaus. It will go on your credit report, and that's, of course, going to lower your credit score. More importantly, the money judgment can be collected by garnishing your income, garnishing your bank account, or
And that means taking money out of your paycheck, taking money out of your bank account, right?
And you have no control. Once they tap in and grab, they take until that debt is gone.
Well, let's be more specific about that. There's a garnishment period, which generally ranges from 1 month to 6 months, whether they're garnishing your wages or whether they're garnishing your bank account. And that gives the debtor the opportunity to file an exemption or otherwise object to the wage garnishment or the bank account garnishment. So if you act in a timely manner, the money is not necessarily gone, because until the garnishment period is over, the money doesn't go to the creditor, it stays within the control of the court. So one of my pet peeves to folks is get legal help as soon as you can. Don't ignore court papers.
That's wonderful.
That's an important, very important point. I mean, there are definite garnishment protections. Government benefits cannot be garnished. Pensions cannot be garnished. Wages that are less than $290 per week take home after required taxes are withheld. Social Security, Medicare, federal and state taxes cannot be garnished. So there are definitely protections that debtors have, even if they have a judgment against them. But they have to know about those protections, and particularly if wages are being improperly garnished, or if a bank account with exempt funds is being improperly garnished. If you do nothing and the garnishment period ends, you lose the money, it's gone forever. So again, that's why it's really important for people to take timely action and not ignore court papers.
When you ask the question, I think of debt is a barrier and lack of access to some things. If people overextend their debt, then that shuts off when that emergency does come up, when they could use that credit card.
Absolutely.
You know, and we advocate not to have more than 30% of your available credit as a balance. They should be designed, or the consumer should view having a credit card or some type of debt as a means for emergency. I know some people use a credit card or a charge card just for travel and those certain kind of expenses. But other people, and we're seeing now clients that are coming in, that they're living off of their credit cards, which is really a serious, concern. And again, that's a barrier because we don't see into it until we curb what happened, from how did you get off track? There's money coming in the house, but you might not have the concept of how much is coming in, because that basics of sitting down, these bills are due on the 1st, these bills are due on the 2nd, and how do we juggle the money? If there's one paycheck coming in, there's no extra money. If there's 2 paychecks, you could schedule out and budget that money. And we try to teach in our classes very simple ways of not having that noose around your neck of that credit card or the predatory lending if people have went to a check cash in place or a predatory lender and they start showing up at your door. Just like you'd see in the movies, they'd send the man out to knock on the door and say, we want our money, and things like that. I don't know if we're getting there again, but for a period of time, people said they're calling them on their jobs, they're showing up at their door. So if people want to avoid that type of embarrassment that Marty referenced earlier, is not to get caught into that system of the predatory lendings, check cash in places, and they're everywhere. I think there's like 12 agencies around the Thomas Jefferson Planning District, and they're sitting there waiting for people who are vulnerable or who lack information, as Corbin said, or the tools or resources to know how to avoid getting those. So high debt is a big barrier to your living, just your survival from paycheck to paycheck.
One of the more astounding facts is that in Virginia, there are more payday lending stores than there are McDonald's.
No.
Yes, this is true.
No.
Wow.
This is true.
That's scary.
It is very scary.
Does that have something to do with North Carolina saying they implemented the 36% and they shut down some companies there and Virginia hasn't done it yet?
Well, it really has to do with the fact that Virginia started allowing payday lending, primarily because all of the neighboring states were. And so the General Assembly, rightly or wrongly, decided it would be better to regulate it and have it under some control than none at all. And so once it was allowed in Virginia, they mushroomed. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that about 2 years ago, there was some significant payday lending reform that has cut the volume dramatically. And again, if people get no message from this, then this. Don't go to payday lending stores. Don't do equity lines of credit. Don't go to car title lenders. You are getting ripped off.
It is. It's the biggest scam that I'm aware of. And also, and I'm going to link over to the default foreclosure prevention. Any 1-800 number or any of these televised programs saying we can stop that foreclosure, we can modify your loan, they are scams. People need to be able to contact a HUD housing counseling agency, and they can go to HUD.gov, HUD.gov, and get that information of who's in their area, or call their local legal aid or a housing agency that's in their community to find that a company, and they will walk them through and give them information and tools on foreclosure process, also work with them on their budget and things like that, and getting them through that system. But they need to work with reputable agencies.
Right. There's no surer sign of a foreclosure rescue scam than somebody who wants money up front. Because any legitimate HUD-certified mortgage default counselor will not charge those services are free.
We can't charge.
Exactly. And that's in general true for scams. Anything that wants money up front, whether it's a Nigerian email or a federal grant scam, you've been awarded a federal grant, we need your credit card number or your bank account number. Anything that's asking for that type of information or advance payment, there's no surer sign of a scam.
I think people get confused because there have been a lot of companies that have either copied or replicated government seals. And so they have letterhead that looks very official. And could understand people thinking, well, this must be from the government, this must be something that I should respond to.
Yeah, I get an email from Bank of America, and it's not a legit Bank of America. I have the information, so I knew it wasn't, because I know I didn't give my email address to Bank of America. Number one, common sense there. I did not provide them that information, so I should not be receiving anything saying there's a security alert on my account.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that was the first thing, you know.
Basically, not only will it come in a physical letter, but it can come in the email format that you were stating, which is a tactic called phishing.
Right.
That hackers use via the internet. Well, they will email you or send some trying to transmittal through the web to where it mimics a reputable, even a reputable company, being Bank of America or any.
So real.
It looks so real. It will address you by name.
Yes.
It will even provide some account information.
The last 4 numbers of the actual account.
Because someone has gotten in and hacked into the system.
Yeah.
And then once you provide that information, you have been taken for a loop.
Yeah.
And then it is just wide open.
And I'm not quite sure why it's spelled that way, but it's with a PH.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Phishing scams. And again, no reputable government agency or private entity will ask for this type of confidential information, whether it's your social security number, your bank account number, or anything like that, by phone, unsolicited, by email, unsolicited, and even if it comes by snail mail, you really need to check it out carefully for its authenticity.
And I would recommend, but tell me if this is right, if you get something like this and you think that it could be legitimate, call.
Yes.
Call your institution and find out, did you send this letter on this date?
And you also can report it to the Virginia Office of the Attorney General.
Yes.
If you go to their website, you will see their top 10 scams, and phishing scams is among the top 10, as well as the federal grant scam that I mentioned, as well as identity theft, as well as the Nigerian email letter, and there's 7 others that are on that list. You report that to the Attorney General's office, at least they can begin to build their database and try to go after these crooks. And that's what they are. They're just stealing money. They're just more sophisticated than on the street criminals.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's get into this. What are the top 10 scams out there? What are things that people should absolutely 100% avoid?
Marty, you've mentioned the Nigerian scam. I have received emails
weekly.
constantly
Yes.
of, we need your account information because we have millions and millions of dollars we need to wire you, and we want you to invest this. And when you invest, you will receive XYZ compensation for this. First of all, I don't even have a contact in Nigeria. Second of all, why in the world would somebody just randomly send you an email saying they want you to invest money for them and they don't even know who you are?
They don't care.
But common sense, you may call it.
Yeah.
But when people get in desperate times, we talk about low-income families and people that are in tough financial, economic times, and they see these grand schemes that may possibly get them out of debt or think they're going to get them out of debt, and they just take the bait and go with it.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I actually got caught into one of the scams. And I'm fessing up here. And it's a local a person here that I know very well, a friend of mine, and an email came from her email address. So someone hacked into her email address, and it went to her whole contact list. And she said, I'm in Africa, she was stranded, she lost her passport, she lost this, that, and the other. And I'm telling you, there was hundreds of people that came to her rescue.
Absolutely.
Because it sounded legitimate, right?
We knew her, and she would be in Africa, you know, and she would be, you know, something that was so real. And I sent $100, and then I saw her, and I said, I'm so glad you're okay. And she said, that was a scam, and somebody had hacked into her database.
Absolutely.
And it was like, you got to be kidding! I just got caught, you know. But it was her, just like she had wrote it, just like she had wrote it. It was so real. So I would recommend make the phone call if you get something, because it had her name, it came from her email address, not a financial institution. It actually came from her personal email address, and it went out, and it was a lady, another friend of hers that emailed me, and she saw my response, you know, because I responded, and she said, so-and-so is here, she's not in Africa, it's a scam.
Well, Shelley, I think probably everyone you talk to has either nearly been caught or been caught.
Yes.
I have a relative, works for a university, got an email from the university about paycheck information, and we need to confirm your account number for the direct deposit. And he thought, well, I do that. You know, I do direct deposit for my paycheck.
Right.
Didn't think anything of it. And it was all, and people all throughout.
My personal experience would be my home computer was hit by a fake virus attack. These are launched usually from sites in Russia or China or other places, and it will basically disable your computer, but then a pop-up box will pop up to click how to fix the problem.
How to fix it.
Well, fixing the problem involves sending money to some place that will fix the problem, and of course you'll never see your money again, and the problem will not be fixed. Call a reputable actual computer doctor who will come and take several hours to clean this mess off of your computer.
Yeah.
A good rule of thumb, I think, for any kind of scam is if it sounds too good to be true, it is.
It is, absolutely.
Whether that's work-at-home scams, whether that's business opportunity scams, the bogus check scam. We will send you this check, but you need to send us the processing fee. You cash the check in your local bank. It's the bogus check. Guess what? You now owe the bank money. You can go after who sent you the bogus check. Good luck on that. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
And if it involves your financial information, never give it out without confirming that it's the legitimate source.
A recent one that's been going around is not the Nigerian one, but it's someone from England saying that, or it was an Asian country saying, so I'm the wife of the prime minister who's held captive, and I have these millions of dollars I can put into your account. It just sounds like something off the TV, you know? And so, again, hit that spam button on your email if you have one of those. And we're talking about reducing debt. This is going to cause us to spend more money if we get caught into these, or we're going to lose money, which is going to throw off our budget, which, again, is going to be another barrier to have access when there is a disruption or an emergency that comes up. We're seeing a lot of people that are unemployed right now, or they had loss of income, and so their financial situation or that household has to be reassessed. They either go to any of our agencies. We need to be able to help them look at and say, okay, so-and-so, you know, your paycheck just was reduced 50% or whatever it is. We need to reassess where this money is going to be going and how you're going to pay your bills.
And let's talk about that because, I mean, there are so many millions of people who have more expenses, bills, and debts every month than they have income to pay them. And your only choice in that situation is to pay your most important first, your least important last, or not at all, at least for a while. And people need to understand that it's their money, it's not their creditors' money. And they spend it the way that's best for them, not the way that's best for their creditors. And so for most people, the most important expenses are going to be your rent or mortgage, your utilities, your food, necessary clothing, not the $100 pair of shoes, but necessary clothing, ongoing medical care, ongoing transportation, ongoing monthly bills. Those unsecured debts, the ones that if you don't pay them, nothing can be taken from you, unlike a car payment, where if you don't make your car payment, the car could be repossessed. Your unsecured debts are, we're talking your old credit card bills, your old medical bills, your old utility bills, where if you pay them, nothing can be taken from you. Those are at the bottom of your list to pay for that month. You've got to pay your most important first, your least important last or not at all.
And I think also to harp on that even further, Shelley, I think we had a conversation maybe about a year ago where you said that you can stop eating, but make sure you take care of your household payment.
Right.
Because that has to be paid.
I said we tell people in the class, you know when your friends are cooking, you know when your parents are cooking.
Absolutely.
And so if you're trying to make that, you know, to keep making that payment, it's harder for us to help you if you don't have a roof over your house.
Absolutely.
And so there's ways that you and your family could still eat. You know, even if the lights get cut off because you're holding on because you made that house payment or that rent payment versus, you know, the utility bill or whatever, people have to start making smarter choices because you know there's alternatives out there. There are programs that can help. There's other agencies within the community that are there that might be able to help with emergency funds. But no one's just giving that money away if you're not doing what you need to be doing.
Absolutely.
So again, coming in on a one-on-one situation, counseling or Providence or legal aid, and assess your situation. How we spend our money is a habit.
Yes.
And
So
we need to break those habits.
And let's talk about that. Let's break that down, because I think a lot of people get into debt. There's a number of reasons. One is not knowing how to manage your income and your expenses. Number two, also maybe not understanding the process or being caught by traps. And then number three, I think there are legitimate emergencies. So I'd like to talk about each of those three things. So first of all, how do you, Shelley and Corbin, how do you talk to people about something that's pretty sensitive, your income, your expenses? How do you talk to people about that?
Well, one of the things that we like to do in a one-on-one counseling class or session, or in a financial literacy class, we tell people, first, what do you have coming in? Write it down. You have to make a list of what bills you have, what money is coming in, but then we'll send clients out a lot of times to track their spending habits.
And when you say money coming in, we're talking about income, we're talking about child support, benefits.
Yes. Okay. And actually people need to understand that what they make is gross, but what they come in the house with is net, and that's real money. So you want to build.
That's after the taxes come out.
That's after the taxes have come out. That's the money you want to deal with. Now, when you go get a loan, they're looking at gross. They're not looking about real money. And that's the system we have in our country.
And I want to say something right there to that.
Sure.
As a loan officer, I think a lot of loan officers, when you have to now you have to be licensed.
Correct.
In order to be a loan originator in the state of Virginia. You look at your money before taxes to calculate their debt to income ratio. And a lot of times the debt to income ratio is very tight. So it's going to also be dependent on whether they get approved or not approved based on this ratio. And I think lenders, one of the categories in the national testing and in the state testing is ethical versus moral. Is it ethical for somebody to be pushed up to a 52% or 55% debt to income ratio? And I know, having a partnership with Piedmont Housing Alliance, that a lot of times when you all get these GFEs, these good faith estimates, and these documents that actually say what the debt to income ratio are, you're saying, wow, these lenders are pushing them all the way up to 55 and 60% and still getting them approved based on money that's not even actual money. So it becomes the responsibility of the lender to say, you know what? Maybe you want to scale this back. How about we stop you at 38% based off what you actually are bringing in? And I think that's where a lot of this problem comes into, because we are not owning up and saying, you know what, this isn't going to be a smart decision. Because what's going to happen.
It's not the time.
And it's not the time for you. And once again, going back to this financial literacy and saying what is really good for you right now at this particular juncture. And you need to assess to say, maybe it's not time for me to get the dream home. And we've been hearing it. There's foreclosures at all-time highs. Interest rates are at super lows. So, of course, people are trying to get a lot of this inventory off the books. But it still may not necessarily be the time. This is when a buy versus rent comparison comes into play.
And it's okay to rent.
Yes.
And as a follow-up to what Corbin said, it's not only important to look at how much you're paying toward that mortgage, but what is that mortgage actually paying for? Because one of the reasons we got into this mess in the housing bubble when it finally burst is that people had the interest-only loans.
Absolutely.
Where all they're paying on their mortgage every month was interest, nothing toward the principal. It got even worse. There were negative amortization loans where you weren't even paying enough a month to pay the interest. So every month you ended up actually owing more on the house. And people got sucked into that because it was a housing bubble, and it didn't matter if you're going to owe us more 3 years from now than you owe now, because the house is going to increase in value by 50% and you'll have that much more equity in the home. The difference between what it's supposedly worth and what you owe on it. Well, it wasn't really worth that. It was just a housing bubble that popped. And those negative amortization loans put so many homes what we call underwater. 1 in 5 homes in the United States of America right now, the home buyer owes more on the mortgage than the home is actually worth. That's a big part of the problem.
And I'll go a step further with you. There was another type of loan that got a lot of people in trouble. It was called a pick-a-pay mortgage. Pick-a-pay would allow you 3 different payment options. It would be a minimum, your bare minimum payment, where you wouldn't even be paying the full amount of interest for the monthly payment that you were paying on. And then you would have what was known as your just interest-only payment. And then there would be the principal and interest payment. But think about this. If you get in difficult times and you're only paying less than the interest you're owing, this interest is starting to compound itself on a monthly basis, which got a lot of people in trouble.
Was that designed that it would only go that way for so many years and then it would come?
It was designed so that if you got in a financial crisis or you got into a financial bind, you didn't have to pay as much. So for example, your option payments might be $700, $950, and then the full principal and interest payment might be $1,200. But you can see the drastic difference between the lower one.
And so people are going to go for the low one.
Absolutely.
Not understanding.
And going what he was saying as far as there is what's called the greater fool theory, which meant that you were buying thinking that the housing bubble was just going to keep on elevating and escalating all the way up, and there never was going to be a drop. Because we all know, based on the laws of gravity, that what goes up eventually comes back down. So these housing prices kept going up. So people kept on buying. They kept buying, thinking, oh, I'm going to buy a house for $250, and you know it's 06 right now, and next year my house is going to be worth $275,000 or $300,000. And guess what?
That was a huge wake-up call.
It became a huge wake-up call, and then people got stuck, and the bulb just busted and dropped.
One of the things I wanted to mention was about credit. We were talking about the barriers of having a lot of debt and your credit. Well, everyone knows about the credit score, and that's made up by your history, your payment history, type of credit you have, and how long you have credit.
And so that would be credit cards, what your payments have been on
any kind of loans that you have, any type of situation where someone gave you credit. You applied and were approved and got credit. It's not going to be credit that's not reported. Marty alluded to that earlier, that some, or Corbin did, some of the debt is not going to show up on the credit report because if the creditor does not, subscribe to the credit bureau or hired by the creditor to have that information in that database, it's not going to show up. That's why the assessment of the whole household is so important. And the credit score is made up, 35% is the payment history. So that means 35% of your score depends on how you pay that bill. If you don't pay it on time, that score is going to start coming down, And then that's where you're more susceptible to get into the scams that we're talking about or the type of lending, programs that are out there. 30% is going to be based on the amount owed. And I referenced earlier that you shouldn't have a balance more than 30-40% of whatever your available credit is.
So if you have a limit of $5,000 on your creddet card, you shouldn't have more than, I can't do the math right now.
$1,500.
$1,500.
Yeah. So let's talk about your credit report. Everybody listening should get their credit report once a year.
Yes.
Do not go to freecreditreport.com.
Do not.
It is not free. It is a paid site. Right. You don't get your credit report for free on this so-called free credit report. The one and only place to actually get your free credit report is www.annualcreditreport.com. You can also call toll-free, 877-322-8228. That will get you your credit report from all three of the nationwide consumer credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. It will be probably 20 or 30 pages each. Go through it in detail because you have the right to be sure that the information that's on there is current and accurate. Information cannot be on your credit report if it is more than 7 years old. Unless it's a bankruptcy, in which case it can stay there for 10 years. Moreover, if there's information on there, it has to be accurate. And if you don't believe that it's accurate or you don't understand why it's there, you have the right to request that it be verified. You have to make that written request in writing, but that will be explained when you get your credit report. And if there's some legitimate dispute you have with an item that's on your credit report, you have the right to put your own statement, usually 100 words in length, into your own credit report, explaining that you dispute this charge and what the basis of the dispute is. Again, you don't have the right to get it necessarily taken off of there if they are able to, quote, verify it. But even if they, quote, verify it, saying that this creditor thinks you owe them money, then you can respond and say, no, I don't, and here's why.
And this is a good point. People need to take advantage of that. And they can come in for those services, you know, to help walk them through that process. You can file for your annual credit report right online, or you can walk into the local credit bureau with ID. But the process of disputing, you can do right online at that same website. And we advocate that a lot through our you know, classes and things like that, that you're dealing with the 3 reputable companies at that time. So.
And counselors at Piedmont Housing Alliance can help.
Yes, yeah, and we don't charge to pull for the credit reports, and we pull the tri-merge credit report. And so, and we'll walk clients through in a one-on-one confidential session, reviewing and actually teaching the client or consumer how to read their credit report and understand the impacts that are on there. And this is a free service that we provide to anyone in our service area.
And I think also one of the services that we provide at the Providence Group is sitting down and helping them understand. Clients find that when they do pull these reports, it is very cumbersome.
Yeah.
Even as a lender and as an advisor, I can tell you right now, there is so much information and there's many different types of reports that every single institution may pull in a different segment. So knowing whether you have late payments in 30, 60-day or 90-day increments, that shows up on the report. Your birth information as far as your government name, last address, and it gives you a history of these employers' information, the debts that you owe. And a lot of times people may just think that everything is okay and just take it for granted that my credit, you may have been a victim of identity theft, as Marty has spoke about earlier, because actually it just happened to me recently with a credit card that was dormant, which means that the card had not been used. I actually put it under one of the services where anytime there was a change in the activity of this account, and I was very fortunate about this, that it would notify me via either text or email that a purchase had been made. And I was sitting on a Saturday morning, lo and behold, a purchase that came across for $327 in Pennsylvania. And I was sitting in Virginia and hadn't been in Pennsylvania in 2 or 3 months. So I called up the credit card company and I said, hey, look, this isn't my purchase. I haven't used this card in 2 years, as a matter of fact. But it's very important that you look at the report. It's not one of those self-healing processes. You have to be proactive instead of reactive about what's going on with your report. You have to step up, take the responsibility, and make sure you are taking an active approach to your credit and not feeling as though, you know what, my credit is bad and I'm just going to let it go. Because a lot of people are doing that right now, and it's not the right way.
They're scared, and it's out of fear.
Absolutely.
And those alerts, there are companies that will sell you those alerts, but guess what? You can also get them for free. Absolutely. You should never pay.
You don't have to pay for the alerts.
And that's just so typical of so many things that are out there that you're being charged for, whether it's the alert, whether it's the free credit report that's not free, that in fact you don't have to pay for it, you can get it for free.
Yes.
Right. We only have about 10 minutes left, so I want to focus here and give people some very concrete tips. Number 1, what to do to get out of debt, and number 2, tips on how to stay debt-free. And we can just go around.
Corbin?
Getting back to the basics, understanding, as Marty has already alluded to, Shelley has already alluded to, know what you have coming in. Be able to account for all of your income that's coming in. That's part-time, full-time, your wages, hourly, salary, know what's coming in. Because I actually was reading an article that the savings rate has gone down every single decade since 1960. It's been declining every single year. But that also has to do of why the debt is in the position that it's in right now. Because people have started to live outside of their means. Knowing what your means is, saying that base your budget on what you're actually bringing in and not what is going to be your before tax money. You have to be honest with yourself. I know it feels good to go out and buy things, and we work, and you want to make purchases to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle, but not going above and beyond your means, assessing what you really can afford, and understanding that it's okay to wait. Save up your cash. If you can create a budget for yourself, put money to the side, whether it's a contingency fund or for a specific purchase, it's okay to pay cash and wait a little bit to be able to not have to go into debt.
Well, since I'm the lawyer in the group, I'll talk about the two big ones, bankruptcy and the alternatives to bankruptcy. Bankruptcy may be an option if you have income or property that you're about to lose that a bankruptcy is going to help you to save. And so generally that means that you're taking home from a job more than $290 per week after taxes, and you then could have your wages garnished or your bank account with those wages in it garnished. Now, people need to be very careful about bankruptcy because you can only file a bankruptcy once every 8 years. And so it does no good to file a bankruptcy now and be back into debt 6, 12, 18, 24 months from now. You've blown your bankruptcy, you can't file again for 6 or 7 years. You're totally at the mercy of your creditors. A lot of people think that it's best to file bankruptcy when their finances are on the way down or they're at rock bottom. We disagree. We think it's best to file when your finances are improving and you're not going to get back into debt for the reasons that I just explained. But the other option for avoiding bankruptcy is to go to a licensed, and I stress the word licensed, consumer credit counseling agency, and they will offer you a debt management plan. And they'll look at all of your unsecured debts, primarily your credit cards, but also the old medical bills, the old utility bills, everybody that you owe money to. And they will try to get all, and again I stress the word all, of them in the plan and ask them all to reduce the amount that you owe. Knock off the late fees, the over limit fees, reduce the interest rates. Sometimes they'll get a principal reduction, and you'll make one monthly payment to the Consumer Credit Counseling Agency, and they will split that monthly payment amongst your creditors. And if you successfully complete the plan, you're debt free. Word of caution, any plan that's set up with monthly payments you can't reasonably afford, walk away. Any plan that is going for more than 4 years, walk away. It's not going to work.
And I'd like to add, any plan that's going to cause you to have to pay them to pay those bills, walk away and go to that HUD certified housing counseling agency, because that habit has not changed. If they don't feel they're going to get off easy thinking they're going to make one lump sum payment, that does not change their spending habits and what got them in that situation. So they have to be more realistic, more proactive, and envision and set goals to say, I want out of this debt. I don't want to be tied to the debt anymore. I need to come out. They need to sit with someone, whoever it is, look at your whole financial situation, and we'd like to look at the family financial situation, because if the parents can't manage their money, those kids are going to grow up in that same environment be caught in the same cycle. And so parents need to look back and think about, do I want my kid to struggle from paycheck to paycheck and the lights going on and off, this, that, and other? Stop it now. Get some help. It's out there. Piedmont Housing offers free services, the same debt management that he's talking about. We can help clients do that, but they're learning how to do it, and it's more accountability from them on how to get out of debt and not someone else paying their bill or them paying to have someone pay their bills. So there's different clients that the debt management programs are good for and some that are not. And we try to judge with that because we're trying to change those habits. Because how we overspend is habit.
Right. And a licensed consumer credit counseling agency will do exactly that kind of budgeting.
Correct.
They can charge no more than $60 per month.
Correct.
They can charge no more than $75 for the initial setup fee. You can find out if they're licensed or not. By calling the Virginia State Corporation Commission's Bureau of Financial Institutions toll-free number, 800-552-7945. And that's who you find out who is licensed. Now, there are a lot of ads. You see them on the internet, on TV all the time. We can knock 50%, 75% off your debt. That's a scam. Those folks aren't licensed, and they cannot deliver what they promise. Indeed, at least half of the people who enter these so-called debt management plans never complete. They lost their money, and they still owe as much or more to all their creditors.
Then we're going to refer them to legal aid.
Exactly. And then they might end up in a bankruptcy if they have to come to property they're about to lose.
So, Karen?
Thank you all so much for this wonderful information. I think people have learned their individual responsibility we can take. We can track our income, our expenses, get our household finances in order. If anyone needs help, they can go to financial management companies, Providence Financial Group. They can come to Piedmont Housing Alliance, free housing counseling and financial literacy, counseling and education, Central Virginia Legal Aid Society as well. So people shouldn't have to go this alone. There are resources out there. And then in terms of the factors we can't control, the predators that are out there, they're going to stay out there. There's not a lot that we can do about it except avoid them. So we've talked about the 10 tips. We'll be putting information on the screen. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. This concludes our session on reducing debt. We hope you've learned a lot from the discussion. We look forward to continuing discussions like this and also on other topics related to home ownership, rental, financial literacy, equal housing opportunity, avoiding foreclosure. All of our sessions will be aired on Charlottesville Public Access TV, Comcast Channel 13, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m. If you have any questions or comments regarding any of the programs or suggestions for future programs, we certainly welcome those. Contact Piedmont Housing Alliance at 817-2436 or email info@piedmonthousing.org. Thank you for joining us.
I'm coming home now. I'm sorry I went away. Every night and day I miss you. I'm coming home, baby, now. Can't hold me back, no, right. I'm pressing on, baby, now. I wanna feel you hold me tight. When I'm in your arms, I'll be high. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now, yeah, yeah, yeah. The road is long, baby, now. Let me hear you say, and I never will go away. Yeah, no, I'm here to stay. I'm coming home, baby, now. Can't hold me back, no, right. I'm pressing on, baby, now. I wanna feel you hold me tight. When I'm in your arms, I'll be high. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now, yeah, yeah, yeah. The road is long, baby, now. Let me hear you say, and I never will go away. Yeah, no, I'm here to stay. I'm coming home. You don't know what I'm going through. Waiting here for you. Come on home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now. I'm sorry I went away. Every night and day I miss you. I'm coming home, baby, now. Can't hold me back, no, right. I'm pressing on, baby, now. I wanna feel you hold me tight. When I'm in your arms, I'll be high. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now, yeah, yeah, yeah. The road is long, baby, now. Let me hear you say, and I never will go away. Yeah, no, I'm here to stay. I'm coming home, baby, now. Can't hold me back, no, right. I'm pressing on, baby, now.